One, reading is, some people take it and they think that that was really easy. So if you're a good, strong reader, you have good comprehension, and you read fast, then you'll maybe think that the reading test, wow, why was that hard and stuff. But then if you have strong comprehension skills, but you're not as fast as of a reader, you're going to have to try some different strategies to do well on the test, maybe. And you'll still do well. It's just like it'll take more out of you than those who are just naturally strong readers. But so a lot of this advice we give you today, I'm going to tell you different ways you can tackle it, and you're going to have to tackle it based on your own self and your own strengths and weaknesses. And you know, those of you who are going to take it more than once, you may know more after you've taken your first reading test that, like, yeah, I was really crunched for time, I'm going to use a different strategy next time. Or if you think, hey, that was nothing, then you're good. So it's going to be different. So there's going to be 4 passages, just like with the science. It's going to be 40 questions in 35 minutes. So that gives you about 8 3/4 minutes per passage. And you're going to play to your strengths first. So usually people are more, you know, if you're wanting to be an English major or teach high school English, you're probably going to prefer the humanities section and the prose or literary narrative sections, and you may want to do those first. I hate those, so I do those last. I like the social studies and the natural sciences sections more. They more follow the rules of the kind of writing I'm used to doing. And you know, they used to call it prose fiction. I think now on the test it's called a literary narrative. That's actually the hardest one for me. It's fiction. Sometimes it's just well, sometimes I think now it's more, it could be a memoir too. So it could be fiction or a memoir, but it's just hard. It doesn't follow the normal rules of, like, you know, topic, sentence and all that stuff. It's a little harder for me because I'm more of a organized kind of a person. So read the one you find easiest first, or the one you find most interesting first. So you just kind of scan over them and look at them and see what you think about them. So with the reading test, if you look at the instructions, it'll probably say choose the best answer, like more than one answer could be right, but choose the best answer. That's not true. There's only one correct answer, and all the information you need is going to be found in the passage somewhere. It may not be in the exact words as the answers, but there's going to be words in the passage that support the correct answer. About 14 of the questions will be referring questions. Those are taken word for word from the passage. It's kind of like a detailed question where you're going to have to answer a detail about a passage. And the others may be reasoning, like you'll have to give what the author's attitude was about something or something like that. But those are still, you're going to be finding words in there that support those answers. And I can give you girls a thumb drive so you don't have to take notes if you want me to. And like I said, there's only one correct answer. So like I said, strategies, no one size fits all. If you're a strong, fast reader, you can just read the passage quickly. Don't just get bogged down. And if you don't understand a sentence, read it over and over. Don't do that, but just kind of read the passage quickly and then start answering the questions, and then you'll know where to go back to look for the answers. If you your real focus should be on the introduction. And you know how when you're writing a paper, at least for the natural sciences and social studies ones, when you're writing a paper, you kind of put your thesis there at the end of that introduction, which the introduction may just be 1 paragraph or it may be 2. But look for kind of what you think is their thesis there at the end of one of those first 2 paragraphs. And then look at the first real close attention to the topic sentences of each paragraph. And maybe you don't have to necessarily read all the details when it starts listing names of, like, who won races, what year, and stuff like that. You don't need to read those. You'd have to come back and find them anyways once you get to a question on that. But and you don't want to waste time on those kind of details when they not even ask about them. So you can read the whole thing. You can just scan it and look at these main topic sentences and stuff, or you can skip reading the passage and move straight to the questions. But that is hard, and it really only works well on a passage. We'll look at some passages. We're going to do 2 passages probably today, and one we're going to start with the questions and one we're going to actually read. And I can't do that skipping and going to the questions on just any old passage. It has to be one that has a lot of line references. I don't know if you have your test in front of you, but the second passage on the reading test has a lot of line references. It'll say like, according to line 7 through 13, what is Jefferson's opinion about such and such? So ones that do that, you can kind of start with those line reference questions, and then you kind of have a map of the passage, and then you can go back and answer the ones that don't have line references. But so me, I don't have I do different passages differently. It's how I have to do it myself. Some people can't ever start with the questions because that's just goes against you know, everything that they think's right. So you will have to decide on what works for you. Also, there's different strategies as far as how you're going to tackle it. One strategy is to tackle all 4 passages, but skip the time-consuming questions. The time-consuming questions are those big picture questions that just, you know, it's not like a detailed question or something you can find directly. It's just kind of a big picture one. That's a time-consuming one. Questions that just when you read it, you don't even understand what the question's asking. That would be one you could skip. Or questions that include the Roman numerals 1, 2, and 3. You might have to say which are true, and it'll say 1 and 2 only, 1 and 3 only, 1, 2, and 3 all. Those kinds seem to suck time. And the inference questions, those are like, but some passages have a ton of inference questions, like you'll see in the first passage we practice on today. So the ones that say, what can you infer about the author's opinion about this from the, you know, from paragraph number 2 or whatever. And when we do have inference questions, we'll go ahead and talk about that here. When you do tackle those, and I'm saying, when I say skip them, you can mark them and come back to them later once you finish and once you've answered all the easy ones. So this is just one strategy right here that you're going to try all 4 passages. So on the inference questions, don't make giant leaps. Just take small steps from what's said in the passage. If you're having to justify it too much in your mind, it's probably not the right answer. If you're having to call on things you know outside of that passage, it's definitely the wrong answer. Like, that will sometimes get you in trouble if the passage is about something you know a little bit about, and then you might use some of your outside knowledge on it. But if it's not in there in the passage, then that's not the answer. If it's not supported somewhere in the passage, that's not the answer. So if you have good reading comprehension, but you're not a fast reader, you may decide to just focus on the three of the passages. Leave the one that you don't like, which usually for me is the prose or literary narrative. Leave it. Don't even think about having time left for it. Just guess like A and F or B and G. Choose your letter of the day and guess on it, and focus on the other 3 and take your time on them. It'll give you like 11.5 minutes per passage, and then you won't feel rushed. And if you do have time, then you can go and answer that 4th one. But if you got all the answers correct on 3 passages, you can still make like a 26 or 27. And sometimes students will do way better just not rushing and taking their time and working on those 3 passages than just feeling so, you know, so harried and hurried and just trying to answer everything. So this may be a strategy for you if you do have good comprehension, but you're not real fast, and having to work fast makes you make a lot of mistakes. You may want to slow down, work on 3 passages. So, all right, the types of questions you'll have are the detail questions. These are the easiest when they give you a line reference, but they can be hard when they don't, because you kind of got to search through the passage and find it. But if you've got kind of a map of what paragraph talked about what, or if you've underlined, some people even underline the topic sentences for each paragraph, then you'll know which paragraph to go look for. There's main idea questions. Usually you can find the answer to that by looking at the title and the introduction to kind of get what the main idea is, at least in this, you know, science and social studies. Sometimes that prose stuff, you know, maybe the last paragraph is more summing it up and giving you an idea of where they went. But, you know, look at that first paragraph and that last paragraph is the best place to look for main idea questions. There's comparison questions, and those you want to look at transitions, and you may want to even underline them as you're going. Transitions are like, you know, your however or your although, your therefores, your for examples. look at those and kind of underline them, because then they're going to make a point after that. They're either going to prove what they previously said if it's one of those continuing transitions, or they're going to counter what they previously said. But usually there's a big point made after that one. And the cause and effects questions, you'd also look at your transitions. There's generalization questions, inference questions. That's the ones I told you. Make small steps. Don't make big, huge leaps. Don't be saying Michael Jordan's the greatest basketball player ever lived just because that's what you personally think. And even if it is true, my son thinks it's LeBron James. But even if you think it is true, don't answer that if it's not somewhere in the text. Okay. Point of view questions. That's usually like, what point of view is it written in first person, third person? You have to answer that, and they'll maybe ask you like, what does the passage gain by being written in first person or third person? It may not just say, it's not just going to say what, usually wouldn't say what point of view is this passage written in. So but just remember your first person, third person kind of points of view. So first person is when it's I, it's got a lot of I's, it's talking about my point of view on it. Vocabulary in context. So these are a little tricky. It'll tell you in lines 7, how is this word used? Which word most clearly defines how this word is used in line 7? And it's usually a different definition than how the word is normally used. So you may have a sentence that said, her thoughts drifted off as she manipulated the clay with skilled hands. And it may ask you which word most closely matches the way manipulated was used. And don't choose the one that means that's like, she's controlling and devious or whatever. Don't use those kind of words. It's talking about how it's used in this sentence. So you'd want to use words that are like formed and things that talk about manipulating clay. So usually they are not the normal definition when you're asked about a vocabulary. Just look at what word could replace that in that sentence. All right. On the accept or not questions, you need to read all 4 answer choices. And really on the reading test, I read all 4 answer choices. And you have to look for the one that is not supported in the text. It doesn't have to contradict the text, and it doesn't even have to be untrue, but it just has to be absent in the text, something they didn't even talk about. Sometimes there'll be an answer that's like totally not something they were even talking about in the text. So some tips for the test is to try to fool yourself into thinking you're interested in what you're reading and to being interested as you can be in it. Try to read as fast as you're able to and still comprehend. If you do decide to read, try to do all 4 of them. And if you're trying to focus on 3, you read at what level you can still comprehend. But don't start reading the same sentence over and over thinking, I just don't understand that, because wait to see if that's part of a question. Okay, read all of the answer choices and don't use information you already know. Like in science, there could be a few questions that call on outside information, but in reading, there's nothing that calls on outside information. Nobody knows what people are assigned to read across the country. So everything is right there on the page somewhere in front of you. So if the answer is true but not supported somewhere in that passage, like Michael Jordan being the greatest basketball player ever, it's not the answer. If it doesn't mention Michael Jordan, then don't use that as your answer. Don't add in your own assumptions. Oh, here's another thing besides noticing the transitions. Notice what comes after dashes and colons, because usually those are used right before a sentence. That's really important. So that's why you're using a dash or colon, to set off that sentence and emphasize it. So you might want to even underline that if you're an underliner. Underline the sentence that comes after a dash or colon. We already talked about notice information after important transitions, like as a matter of fact, those kind of things. And the best way to get better at the reading test is just to take practice test and decide which strategy works best for you. You don't really have time to do that if you're taking the test tomorrow, but those of you that are going to take it later, you can figure out a strategy after you've kind of taken a test and tackled some passages, and it makes more sense what we're talking about. So we are going to tackle some passages that are in your book, only 2, and then I'm going to save the rest of the time for reviewing whatever you guys want to. But if you'll turn to your first passage in the reading test, This is an example of prose fiction, or as they call it now, I think literary narrative. And we're going to set the timer, and you can answer this. This is one that I want you to actually read. And set your own timer so you can see how long this takes you if you kind of read quickly and effectively, and just to kind of base your time. You know what I won't? I'll just set a stopwatch instead of a timer, so, and we'll just keep track of when. I'll set a timer for 10 minutes. That'll give you 10 minutes if you guys are all done before then, because this one's the hardest for me. So this takes me longer than some of the other passages. So I probably can't do this one in 8.75 minutes. So I'll set the timer for 10 minutes, and then we'll go over it and see how you did.
I don't know if I have
the reading test. Okay. Oh, okay. So maybe I do need to give some. Oops, sorry. Trying to stop share. All right. You guys, if you take practice tests on your own, you can try to start with giving yourself what time you need and seeing about how much time that is. I just, for the sake of the group, decided to put a limit on it. So that way, if you can get it done more like in the 11, if it takes you more consistently, the 11.5 minutes, then you'll know maybe focus on 3 passages instead of trying to do all 4. And you can still get a decent grade. A lot of kids get a better grade than when they rush through 4, okay? All right. Question 1. At the time of the events of the story, the narrator is... Does anybody know? And it's only really, you can only tell from about that one line there, that one paragraph. D, yeah. And it's, if you look at the sentence, it's like line 57. I would have to forego the luxury of adolescent experiments and temper tantrums so I could scoop my mother out of harm's way. So she's an adolescent and having to protect her mother instead of the other way around. So, all right, number 2, one of those, this one has a lot of inference questions. So it can reasonably be inferred from the passage as a whole that the narrator views her mother's bargaining skills as one that were developed, which, sorry, can't get it to scroll. What did you put? F, right, to a degree that was exceptional even in Saigon, but that had no apparent outlet in the United States. So that's kind of in line 37. They knew my mother's slick bargaining skills, and she in turn knew how to navigate with grace. So she, it talks, that whole paragraph's really about how she was such a good bargainer. All right, 3, it can reasonably be inferred from the passage that when shopping at the Sky Market, the narrator's mother viewed which of the following as something disagreeable to overcome. Oh, that's the one that's actually 37. Which one? What did you get? B, right, the extravagant prices. She really kind of missed the other things in that, the messiness and the animal odors and stuff, but she, the prices, that's in line 37. So, all right, number 4, the passage states that the narrator's mother finds all of the following aspects of shopping at the A&P troubling except, so this is one of those excepts. You may even have to underline that one. So which one? She finds all of them. No, it's H, the hurried shoppers. I also missed that one the first time I took it, so don't feel bad. But yeah, it's the hurried shoppers. She doesn't mind all that hustle and bustle, and I didn't write down what what lines that was on, but she didn't like the orderly. So it's got orderliness, and it's got no carcasses, you know, compared to the other shopping, and it doesn't talk about her I think I missed that because I was thinking of like the haggling, that she missed the haggling and stuff, but yeah, I missed it too. So All right, number 5. It can reasonably be inferred that the narrator views her mother's approach to shopping at the Sky Market with a mixture of. Anybody get anything different out of it? D. Yeah, respect and nostalgia. She kind of respected her mom's skills and stuff. Yeah, so she looked back on them and stuff, so she respected how, a skilled bargainer she was. All right, and number 6, the passage states that the narrator became aware of her mother's particular way of behaving in the Sky Market as a result of. What'd you guys get? Okay, if we look in line 31, my mother knew the vendors and the shoppers by name and would take me from stall to stall to expose me to her skills. They were all addicted to each other's oddities. So we know that she's with her, so it's going to have to be H or J. And we know that her mother's deliberately displaying her skills, and we don't get really any words that says her daughter was defiant in there, so that's not really supported in the text. So it is H. What about 7? Don't feel bad if you find this hard. I always find the prose fiction literary narrative a hard one for me. So number 7, the distinction the narrator makes between children in general and the children of immigrants in particular is that B, the inevitable from being the vulnerable child to protecting the vulnerable parent takes place sooner. Good. All right, number 8. Which of the following best describes the way the 7th paragraph functions in the passage as a whole? H. Yes, it shows the narrator making connections between the experiences she describes elsewhere in the passage and the experiences of the children of immigrants in general. Yes, other is just about her, and this is kind of when she says, something she has in common with other children of immigrants. So 9, the statement they were all addicted to each other's oddities functions in the passage to support the narrator's view that. Which one? Right. There was a consistent dynamic between the Sky Market vendors and her mother. Good. All right. Number 10's on the back side. I guess I didn't mention this. There's 4 passages, and in the reading, they always have 10 questions each. In science, different passages will have different numbers of questions, but in the reading, it's always 10 questions each. So number 10, the narrator refers to temper tantrums as behavior she would have to view as G, a luxury she could not afford in her new relationship with her mother. I like it when they tell you the exact lines. That helps me out a lot. So in the next passage, it's a social science passage, and even if this is hard for you, and even if at the end you don't know what you really just read, we're going to do an experiment on this one, and I want you to start with the questions, but you wouldn't start. The first question in each passage is usually kind of a main point, like what's the main ideal of this kind of thing. And we're not starting with that one because you would have no idea without reading the passage, but we're going to do all the ones that have line references, skip the others. And then after we do all the ones that have line references, just go hunt and seek and find the answer. Sometimes you have to read a sentence ahead, a sentence after. You can't usually read just that one sentence, but after you find those, then we'll go back and tackle the ones that don't have line references. So this is just an experiment to see if this works for you or not, okay? And maybe the answer is that it doesn't, but we're going to check and see. All right, I'll set the timer for 10 minutes and see if you can do it. I know it might drive some of you crazy, but just try it. All right, here we go. All right. Let's see. Oops, sorry. Let's see what we got. So on a lot of these, you'll find that really you just do a process of elimination. A lot of times it's just like 3 of them totally don't work. And so it's the other one. That's what I do on them. And I find I really do have to read all the answers when I'm doing the reading test. So I think it's a good thing to do. So we're going to do number 11 and 12 last and start with number 13. What did you get for 13? Anybody? It can reasonably be inferred that one of the functions of the first sentence is to That's a very long sentence. A, yeah, A. All right, because some of these is just like you have to rule out the other ones, and yeah, it's A. All right. What about number 14? Which of the following statements best summarizes, oops, sorry, I don't have that on. Which of the following statements best summarizes Lincoln's thoughts about what Jefferson achieved when he wrote the Declaration? So Lincoln's thoughts are in lines 21 through 28. So he wrote, all honor to Jefferson, to the man who, in the concrete pressure of a struggle for national independence by single people, so I was writing it during the pressure of a war. So does any of them, 2 of them talk about that? Okay, so had the coolness, foretaste, and capacity to introduce into a merely revolutionary document an abstract truth, and so I'm not going to read all that. Lincoln is great. He's very eloquent, but it's hard to understand without thinking hard. So which one did you put? Talks about how it was under pressure of war, and the last sentence talks about how he spoke against tyranny and oppression. And yeah, H is this, yeah. He announced a revolution. He wrote a revolutionary document, so it's H. All right, the main function, number 15, the main function of the second paragraph, lines 29 through 44 in relation to the passage as a whole is to This is the one where they start talking about whether he plagiarized or not. So which one is it? It is C. Shift the passage's focus toward an inquiry into the source of the ideas expressed in the Declaration. Did anybody get C? All right. Number 16. In saying, even if we take Jefferson at his word that he did not copy sections of the Declaration from any particular books, the author implies that he thinks Jefferson, what F, may not have been totally honest when he said that no parts of the Declaration were copied from any previous writing. All right, so number 17, use of the phrase characteristic eloquence to describe Abraham Lincoln's words indicates the author's B, belief that Lincoln was usually a persuasive, expressive speaker and writer. So the last couple have been a little easier. Okay, according to lines 29 through 32, students of Jefferson and of the Declaration think that Jefferson, since it's in 29 through 32, right, never foresaw the most of the ideological outcomes of what he wrote. Number 19, the author thinks Jefferson's reply to accusations of plagiarism was ingeniously double-edged because Jefferson claimed that D, his writing was not new, yet he maintained he had not copied from any particular text. That's what he said in that. Okay, number 20. The author uses the description of what was happening in the country when Jefferson was writing the Declaration to suggest that Jefferson, this is where it's talking about the context that Congress was overwhelmed with military reports of imminent American defeat, and committees are meeting through the evening. So you kind of get a sense of what. Was he depressed by news of American defeats and lacked the energy to draft a new document? We know that's not right. Did he know the Declaration could solve the problems of the nation and finished it in a hurry? Well, it doesn't really say that. So did he worry that the war was moving closer to home and felt he should take his time writing the Declaration? He didn't take his time. He got it. The obvious practical course was for Jefferson to take was to rework his previous drafts on the same general theme, and because he's trying to get it done in a hurry. So it's F, felt great urgency to get the Declaration written and didn't have much time to do so. So what you kind of get the idea from all that he didn't necessarily write this all fresh original, but he's using his own previous work to things he'd written before, and that he like used that stuff. So let's go to 11. It can reasonably be inferred from the package that the author believes that Jefferson was D or B? D. An average man who has been represented as a quasi-religious leader by later generations. Well, he may have been, later generations think of him as a leader and stuff, but that's not really what the main point of this passage was. Does anybody have a different?
I have
B, right. A brilliant yet practical man, neither plagiarizer nor prophet, writing under pressure. So he really wasn't a plagiarizer because he's like quoting from his own previous work and stuff, but he wasn't a prophet and didn't just come up with it all in one sitting and stuff. So that's kind of what it gets at. All right, number 12, details in the passage suggest that the author's personal position on the question of Jefferson's alleged plagiarism is that the F, right, because some of those others, they're totally opposite, that he doesn't feel, G is actually wrong because he implies he cut and copied from his previous work and stuff. So and that for the same reason H is wrong. So yes, the idea of Jefferson copying from his own writings is only common sense. So that would be F. So these are kind of hard. And like up here in number 11, there might have been a thing that said that Jefferson was the most important man of the American Revolution and the greatest of all the fathers of the country. And that may be your opinion, and it may be something that could possibly be true, but answers like that are not really talked about in the passage, they're not the answer. Okay, so it has to be stuff that's covered in the passage, not things you think or things you've heard elsewhere or anything like that. So they're kind of examples of reading passages, and it's just like with the science passage, and some of them will be easier and some will be harder. And it's like with the science, practice is how you get better, is you just practice taking them.